Hey guys, I hope you're all doing well in your quarantine. Hopefully, you haven't flipped out too much on your siblings yet and gone too crazy in your isolation. Hopefully, the nice weather last weekend gave you an opportunity to get outside, and I'd encourage you to take advantage of stretching your legs outdoors when you can. I'm here in my basement today, in my man cave. As I was setting up for this video, I was thinking this kind of plain wall behind me, it would look really good to have a J.D. Black autographed football picture up there. I don't know, maybe not, but I'm just throwing it out there. Anyway, it's good to talk to you today, to share God's Word with you a little bit today. A couple announcements before we jump into the lesson. Today, Urban Hope is still scheduled for May 1st through the 3rd. It doesn't look real promising that is going to happen. The odds are it'll probably be canceled, but as of now, it's still a go. So if you're interested in that, you can still go online and sign up for that. Also coming up is Momentum this summer in July. That actually looks a lot more promising, that we're still going to have Momentum. So get online and get signed up for that. They actually extended the early registration deadline through the end of October. So if you sign up and pay your deposit by October 30th, that locks you in at the lowest rate for Momentum. So get online and get that done. Today we're going on in Ephesians. We'll be in Ephesians 6 today. And we actually have this lesson and one more lesson, and then we're done with Ephesians. And I've actually been talking with Pastor Daryl at Martinsburg and some other guys about doing some kind of creative stuff here coming up in April, so you won't have to just stare at my face talking to you for the entire month of April. We'll have some other stuff going on and some other things you can participate in coming up through the month of April. Also keep in mind that as a church, Liberty Grace, we rented the drive-ins, the Silver Drive-In on Scalp Avenue, and we'll be having a service there on Good Friday, April 10th at 8 o'clock. So that'll be pretty awesome to go to the drive-ins and to see church up on the big screen at the drive-in. Excuse me. So keep that on your calendar as well. Good Friday, 8 p.m. Anyway, Ephesians 6 today, the first part of it. And as I was prepping for this, I just kept thinking of Joyce at home watching this and celebrating that we're talking about Ephesians 6 verses 1 and 2. Just celebrating, children, obey your parents, honor your father and mother. Right? Joyce probably wishes we talked about this verse like every week at Veracity. I won't do that to you, but we will talk about it some tonight, and don't worry, it's not all going to be pounding on you to obey your parents, because there's some stuff in there for parents as well. But before we jump into chapter 6, I want to do a quick rewind to what we talked about last week in Ephesians 5, and especially what we started with last week, Ephesians 5, verse 21. You can look at it there, look at it in your Bible, pull it up on YouVersion. It says there, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And remember, we started last week talking about that all of us, whether we're men or women, young or old, we're all in some way to be submitting to one another. That in our decisions, we need to think not just what is most beneficial for me, but what is beneficial for the other people around me that my decision affects. And Paul starts to put that in the context of different relationships through these next couple verses. We talked last week about putting this in the context of husbands and wives. Wives should respect their husbands. Husbands should love and care for their wives. And this week we're going to see it in the context of children and parents. That children need to obey and honor their parents. Parents need to lovingly lead and guide and train their children in godly wisdom. And then we're not going to get to it, but the rest of the passage that you should have read for this week. It talks about kind of slaves and masters, or in more modern terms, and employees and bosses. That employees need to respect their boss and work hard for their boss, and that bosses need to care for and seek to meet the needs of their employees. And so we're all submitting to one another, all considering others above ourselves in our decision making. And so today we're going to focus especially on this child-parent relationship. So look at verse 1 of Ephesians 6. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you, and that you may live long in the land. And so the first part of that, children, obey your parents. And I took some time to think, how do I want to break this down? Do we want to go back to the original Greek? And the reality is, no matter how we broke it down, it simply says, obey your parents. And that's pretty straightforward. When your parents give you rules and directives, obey your parents. It's just as simple as that. And we're going to talk a little bit later, like what do we do if our parents are telling us to do things wrong, or if you have abusive or in some other way harmful parents. But just in general, for most of us that have generally decent parents, we simply just need to obey them. That God has given them as an authority in our life, and whether we like their rules or not, God has called us to obey them and to follow their leading and what they tell us to do. More importantly, though, is the second verse in this chapter. Honor your father and mother. Because this goes beyond just the rules and just following the rules to what is your actual attitude towards your parents. Do you have an attitude, do I have an attitude, of honor and respect for our parents? Again, they're given to us by God as an authority figure in our life, and so we should honor and respect them as that authority figure in our life. And this is whether they're great, amazing parents, whether they're horrible parents, or like probably almost all of our parents, somewhere in between. Right? They do some good things and they make some mistakes at times, and that happens. But either way, wherever they're at on that spectrum, we need to honor and respect them simply because they're our parents. One of the things that really annoys me and really drives me nuts is when I'm out in public. You guys remember that, going out in public? I know it's been a while. Hopefully we'll be back to that soon and able to go out in public again. But one of the things that always drives me nuts when I'm out in public and I see some kid just flipping out on his mom. Just yelling at his mom, "Mom, whatever, forget you." And I did say forget there. But a lot of times that kid isn't saying forget. He's saying a word that I can't say on a Christian YouTube video. And that just annoys me. Because God has given you that parent in your life, and that parent's probably done a ton of stuff for you, and especially for that kid that's flipping out on his parent's probably giving him way too much stuff. And in return, you're flipping out on him when God says we should be showing them respect and honor. Again, whether they're a great parent or not so great, we still need to figure out how in some way can we honor and respect them and be grateful for whatever they've given us and however they've cared for us. And just to make this a little more practical for you to think through in your own life, let me just share with you how I struggled with these passages as a kid, how I struggled with obeying and honoring my parents. Like I told you guys a couple weeks ago when I shared my testimony, that I've always been kind of a rule follower. So if my parents gave me like a directive, don't do this, we need you to go do this, for the most part, I was usually pretty good at obeying those things and going and doing what I was told. But my struggle was always in that part of honoring and doing those things with the proper attitude. Or maybe my dad would tell me, go take out the trash, and I'd go take out the trash, but I would not do it joyfully as serving unto the Lord. I would do it with a pretty lousy attitude, just complaining the whole way. Oh, my stinking parents are making me do this, take this trash out. Right? That's not honoring and respecting my parents. That's not looking for ways to lovingly serve them and show them gratitude for what they've done for me. And that was always a struggle for me when I was growing up, to maintain that good attitude, to be looking for how I could be serving and loving my parents rather than just doing enough following the rules to stay out of trouble. And so maybe that's your struggle, maybe not. I'll be a little bit vulnerable with you guys and share another thing I wish I would have done better when I was younger. And this has just hit me over the last few years since my dad passed away. One of the things I really wish I would have done better was valuing and enjoying time with my parents. A lot of times I just kind of took my parents for granted, took for granted that they were there, and a lot of times was just focused on doing my own thing, doing what I want to do, rather than valuing time with my parents and making sure I was enjoying time with them. Because that really honors them when you want to spend time with them and when you enjoy spending time with them. And now that my dad's not around for me to spend time with, it's something that I really look back and say, man, I wish I would have done that better, because I can't do that now. And so I'd really challenge you with that. Value the time you have with your parents and enjoy that time with them. Look for ways that you can really show them honor and respect and gratitude, and then simply obey what they tell you to do. Anyway, moving on in this passage, and we'll skip over the promise for now and come back to that promise part, but verse 4. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. And so this is directed primarily at fathers, but also would apply to mothers and to parents in general. That the parent is, first of all, not to provoke their child to anger. Don't be abusive of that authority that you've been given. Right? As I said earlier, a parent's been given a place of authority over a child by God, but they shouldn't abuse that place of authority. And so, for you children, this gives you maybe a little bit of leeway at times to kind of speak up for yourself and maybe even not obey if your parent is asking you to do something that's clearly illegal or wrong or sinful. Remember, God's law is the primary thing, the most important thing. I mean, and if your parents are asking you to do something that's illegal or clearly sinful, then they're not properly using their authority. Or if they're asking you to do something that's completely unreasonable and harmful to you, again, they're abusing their authority. Now, before you go to your mom tonight and say, Mom, you're abusing your authority, you're being unreasonable, I do not have to wash the dishes, take a step back for a second. Let's think about what I just said, and let me give you some cautions in that, because I'm not giving you free reign just to anytime you don't want to do something, don't obey your parents. But what I'm saying is when they've stepped across that line and abused their authority, then that's a different story. But we have to be cautious in that. And first of all, we need to remember that no matter what, we still need to honor our parents. Even if they're terrible parents, we still have to honor and respect them. Even if we need to speak up for ourselves at times, we still have to do that in an honorable way. To just completely flip out on your parents in no way is an honorable, God-honoring way, no matter what they're saying to you or telling you to do. And so, again, first and foremost, we need to make sure we're always still honoring and respecting our parents. Secondly, I encourage you, before you go, what they're telling me to do is so unreasonable and so wrong, I'd encourage you, go talk to a godly adult that you trust and make sure you have proper perspective on the situation and that you're thinking through that situation clearly. Right? If your parents drive you to First National Bank and drop you off in the parking lot and say, go rob that bank, then it's probably pretty safe in that instance to be like, I'll pass and get out of that situation. But short of doing something like that, which I don't know that most of our parents would ask us to do anything clearly illegal like that. Short of that, before we say, I can't do that, we need to step back and we need to make sure we have proper perspective. And we need to talk to some other godly adults that we trust and say, what do you think I should do in this situation? Is this really, like, it feels really unreasonable that they're asking me to do this, but is it really? Because a lot of times the things we feel and think are unreasonable, it's really just our selfishness and not wanting to do it. And it's a lot of times our lack of wisdom as younger people too, that we don't always just see the bigger picture that our parents are trying to teach us and get across from us as well. So again, there is maybe some leeway in there sometimes if your parents are abusing their authority, but man, make sure you've prayed and you've thought through that and you've talked to some other godly adults before you decide that you're not going to obey. And always make sure you're still honoring and respecting your parents in that. But I would say for most of you, just obey your parents. They have your best interests in mind. Secondly, there, for parents, they're to bring up their children in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. And so one of the things God has tasked parents with, and especially if you're a Christian parent or if you have Christian parents, that they've been tasked with training you in who Jesus is and modeling for you what it looks like to follow Jesus. And I hope, I pray you have parents that are doing that for you. And again, I know a lot of your parents that are in Veracity and know you have some godly parents that are trying to teach you and trying to model those things for you. And I really challenge you and encourage you to let them train you, to listen to their advice, to listen to their wisdom. Even if it doesn't really make sense now, someday down the road it will make some sense. You will understand why they told you to do that or don't do this. And so seek that godly advice, seek that godly wisdom if you have godly Christian parents. If you don't have godly Christian parents, first of all, they probably still do have some wisdom they can share with you, so don't completely write them off. They have no clue about anything. They've still been through stuff in life, and they still have some wisdom they can share with you. But if you don't have godly parents, I really encourage you to find some godly adult at church, at Veracity, in your community, some godly, mature adult person that you know that you can seek to have them mentor you. Seek to give you some godly wisdom and training, and then listen to them and let them speak into your life. I know I'd be happy to do that for you. Joyce and Rose and Aaron would be happy to be that mentor for you if you're looking for that type of person in your life. Because we all need people, even myself, even at the age I am now, I need older men that I can look up to, that I can seek advice from, and that I can gain godly wisdom from. Because we're all learning and growing all throughout our lives. And so I just really encourage you and challenge you this week to be sure that you're valuing your parents. Be sure you're seeking to obey. Be sure you're seeking to honor and respect them. Be sure you're just valuing the wisdom that they can give you, especially if you have godly Christian parents. And I just want to end with verse 3, and why is this important? It's important simply because this is what God tells us to do, but it's also important because of verse 3 there, that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. That God promises us that if we seek godly wisdom from godly parents and other godly adults, and if we're obedient and if we're respectful to our parents, it's going to help us in our life. And don't take that verse too far. It doesn't mean if you're obedient and respectful, you're guaranteed to live to 90 years old and be wealthy. But it does mean that to follow godly wisdom from godly adults and to be obedient and respectful is going to help you to have a better life. Bad things are still going to come. There's still going to be issues, but you can avoid a lot of bad stuff just by listening to the wisdom of those who have gone before you. And as a community, if we're building good families in our community, godly parents teaching their kids to follow Jesus, it's going to help us to have a much healthier, much better community as well. That God promises, if you just pass on my word, if you just learn from godly people and godly wisdom and seek to follow it, it's going to make things go a whole lot better. Remember, God's the one that created this universe. He laid it all out. He planned it all out. He's written the instructions, and it works a whole lot better when we follow the instructions, especially when we have godly people who have gone before us who can help us to really understand what God's instructions mean. So seek out that godly wisdom. Be respectful of your parents and seek to obey them. I know it's hard. I know it's not what you want to do, but it will benefit you in the long run. So thanks for listening, guys. Remember, I'm praying for you. Remember, I love you. Stay safe out there, and look forward to chatting with you soon.